Back in my second year of college, I shared an apartment with a girl who, at first, seemed completely normal. We were both around 21 or 22, trying to figure out life, classes, friendships, and everything that comes with that phase. In the beginning, things were actually pretty good. We'd chat in the kitchen, share snacks, sometimes watch shows together. Nothing felt off. But slowly, almost without me noticing at first, her behavior started to change. It began with what felt like harmless questions. She'd text me while I was out. "Where are you? Who are you with? When are you coming back?" At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she just liked being in the loop or was being friendly. But then it became constant. Every time I stepped out, I'd get multiple messages. If I didn't reply right away, she'd follow up again and again. Then the tone started to shift. If I said I'd be home at a certain time and ended up staying out longer, even by an hour, she'd get upset. Not just mildly annoyed, full-on angry. I'd come back to long messages calling me inconsiderate or a bad friend. Sometimes she'd use really harsh words, way beyond what the situation called for. It stopped feeling like concern and started feeling like control. What made it worse was that it wasn't just about timing. If I changed plans while I was already out, like deciding to go somewhere else with friends, I'd get paragraphs from her. She'd accuse me of not caring about her or not respecting her. It felt like I had to follow a strict schedule just to avoid an argument. But the strangest part was the double standard. She could do whatever she wanted. There was one night that really stuck with me. She brought a group of people back to the apartment, and they stayed up all night, loud, laughing, playing music, and doing things that made it impossible to sleep. I had a 9 a.m. class the next morning, but that didn't seem to matter to her. They were still going strong at 6 a.m. Meanwhile, I wasn't even allowed to have friends over in my own room. She said it made her anxious. That was her word for everything, anxious. If I mentioned having someone over, she'd get tense and start questioning me. So I stopped asking. Instead, I'd sneak people in quietly, hoping she wouldn't notice. Imagine that, feeling like a guest in your own home. It didn't stop there. Anytime I went out without her, something would suddenly go wrong. There'd be some kind of emergency that required me to come back immediately. Sometimes it was something small, but she'd act like it was urgent and serious. If I didn't respond or didn't come back right away, it would turn into a huge fight later. One night, I was at a pub quiz with friends, finally relaxing and having a good time. My phone started buzzing nonstop. Calls, texts, more calls. I stepped outside to check, thinking something must be seriously wrong. It was her. She said the fire alarm battery in the apartment was beeping, and she was too anxious to deal with it. She kept insisting I come back right away. I tried to explain that I was out and couldn't just leave, but she wouldn't let it go. She kept calling. Eventually, it got so awkward that someone from the bar actually came over to tell me I had a call waiting. I felt embarrassed and pressured, so I gave in. I left my friends and went back home. When I got there, I tried to fix the issue, but it turned out the alarm just needed new batteries. There was nothing I could do at that moment. Frustrated, I said, there was no point in me coming back. And she just looked at me and calmly said, "I know." That moment hit me hard. It was like everything clicked. All the stress, all the control, all the unnecessary drama, it suddenly felt very clear. She hadn't actually needed me. She just wanted me there. She wanted that level of control over my time and attention. That was the moment I mentally checked out. After that, I stopped trying to keep the peace. I stopped over-explaining where I was going or who I was with. I started realizing that this situation wasn't normal, and it definitely wasn't healthy. But things got even weirder when it came to my personal life. Around that time, I had started seeing a guy. Nothing too serious at first, just getting to know each other. The funny thing is, when my roommate first met him, she actually liked him. They met briefly while we were out one night, standing in line for a club. She told me afterward that he seemed like a really good guy. No issues at all. But the second she realized that things between us had become more than just casual, her entire attitude changed. Suddenly, she didn't like him. There wasn't a clear reason. She just started making comments about him, questioning his intentions, and acting like he was a problem. It didn't make sense, especially considering she had liked him at first. It felt like another form of control, like she didn't want me getting close to someone else, like she wanted to be the center of everything in my life. And that tension just kept building. After that shift, things in the apartment started to feel even heavier. It wasn't just the constant messages anymore. It was the atmosphere. You know that feeling when you walk into a place and can immediately tell something is off? That's how it felt every time I came home. Even if nothing had happened yet, I was always waiting for the next issue, the next complaint, the next argument. I started changing my behavior just to avoid conflict. I'd check my phone more often, reply faster, give more detailed explanations about where I was going and who I'd be with. I tried to keep everything predictable so she wouldn't have a reason to get upset. But no matter how careful I was, it never seemed to be enough. There was always something. If I stayed out too late, it was a problem. If I didn't invite her somewhere, it was a problem. If I did invite her and she didn't want to go, but I went anyway, it was still a problem. It felt like I was stuck in a loop I couldn't win. At the same time, she kept doing whatever she wanted without any consideration for me. More late nights, more random people in the apartment, more noise, more chaos. And if I ever brought it up, even calmly, she'd flip it around and make it about her anxiety or how I wasn't being understanding. After a while, I stopped bringing things up altogether. It just wasn't worth the fight. The situation with the guy I was seeing added another layer to everything. At first, I tried to keep that part of my life separate. I didn't talk about him much around her, hoping that would keep things calm. But she noticed anyway. She started asking more questions about him, what we were doing, how often we were seeing each other, whether I was staying over at his place. The questions didn't feel like curiosity. They felt like interrogation. And then the comments started. Little things at first. I don't think he's right for you. He seems a bit off. I just get a weird vibe from him. It was confusing, especially because she had said the exact opposite when she first met him. Back then, she thought he seemed great. Now suddenly, he was a problem. It didn't add up. The more serious things got between me and him, the more negative she became. It was like she was trying to plant doubts in my mind or create distance between us. If I mentioned spending time with him, she'd go quiet or make some passive-aggressive comment. At one point, she even implied that I was changing because of him, that I was becoming less considerate as a roommate and a friend. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. If anything, I was just starting to set small boundaries, and she didn't like that. The turning point came during one of our arguments. I don't even remember what started it. It could have been anything at that point. Something small that turned into something big, like it always did. Voices raised, tension high, the same cycle repeating itself. Then she said something that stuck. She told me, very clearly, that if I slept with him again, she would stop speaking to me. At first, I thought I misheard her. It sounded so extreme, so unreasonable that it didn't feel real. I remember just standing there, trying to process it. This wasn't about shared spaces or noise or schedules anymore. This was her trying to control my personal life, my choices, my relationships. That crossed a line. Up until then, I had been trying to manage the situation, trying to keep things calm, avoid arguments, make compromises. But in that moment, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just frustration anymore. It was clarity. I realized that no matter what I did, it would never be enough for her. The goalpost would always move. The rules would always change. And the more I gave in, the more she would take. So instead of arguing, I just said okay and walked away. But in my head, I had already made my decision. I wasn't going to let her control that part of my life. That night, I went out like I normally would. I met up with him and we spent time together without me constantly checking my phone or worrying about what was happening back at the apartment. For the first time in a while, I felt relaxed. I didn't rush back. I didn't send updates. I didn't try to manage her reactions from a distance. I just lived my life. And yes, I made the choice she had tried to control. Not out of spite at first, but out of a sense of taking my freedom back. But as I walked back into the apartment later that night, I'll admit, there was a part of me that felt something else too. Not anger exactly, but a quiet kind of defiance, like I was done shrinking myself to fit her expectations. The tension in the apartment was immediate. She didn't say anything right away, but I could tell she knew. The silence felt heavy, almost louder than any argument we'd had before. And in that silence, I realized something surprising. I wasn't nervous anymore. I wasn't anxious about what she might say or do next. I wasn't trying to figure out how to fix things or smooth them over. That constant pressure I'd been carrying for months, it just wasn't there anymore. Because I had already accepted the outcome. Whatever happened next, I was done playing by her rules. And that's when things finally reached their breaking point.
After that night, everything changed. But in a strange way, it also got a lot simpler. There was no big explosion, no dramatic shouting match like before. Instead, things went completely quiet. The next morning, she didn't speak to me. No comments, no passive-aggressive remarks, nothing. Just silence. At first, I thought maybe it was temporary. Maybe she just needed time to cool off, and then we'd go back to the usual cycle. Tension, arguments, forced conversations. But that didn't happen. She stuck to what she said. She completely stopped speaking to me. And honestly, I didn't chase it. For the first time since living together, I didn't try to fix things. I didn't apologize, didn't explain, didn't try to smooth things over. I just let the silence sit there. And that's when the dynamic fully shifted. Instead of constant arguments and tension, we moved into this weird system where we communicated through notes. If something needed to be said about bills, cleaning, anything practical, it would be written down and left somewhere visible. A sticky note on the fridge, a piece of paper on the counter. Short, direct, no emotion. It sounds awkward, and it was, but it was also strangely peaceful. There were no more long messages blowing up my phone while I was out, no more interrogations about where I was going or who I was with, no more sudden emergencies designed to pull me back home. It was like all the noise had just stopped. And in that quiet, I started to feel like myself again. I could go out without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I could make plans without worrying about how she'd react. I could invite friends over without feeling like I was doing something wrong. Even just being in the apartment felt different. Before, it always felt tense, like I was walking on eggshells. Now it was just neutral. Not warm or friendly, but not stressful either. And honestly, I preferred that. Looking back, it's kind of ironic. The thing she threatened, cutting off communication, ended up being the best thing that could have happened for me. All the control she had over my time and energy disappeared overnight because she chose to withdraw it. And I didn't try to bring it back. Those last 4 weeks in the apartment were the calmest they had ever been. I kept to myself, focused on my classes, spent time with my boyfriend, and started making plans to move out. There was no emotional drain anymore, no constant pressure to manage someone else's reactions. It felt like I had my space back, even though we were still technically living under the same roof. Every now and then, we'd pass each other in the hallway or kitchen. No eye contact, no acknowledgement, just two people existing in the same place. It was cold, sure, but it was also predictable. And after everything that had happened, predictability felt like relief. I didn't have to guess what mood she was in. I didn't have to prepare myself for a confrontation. I didn't have to shrink myself to avoid setting her off. I could just exist. As moving day got closer, I started packing my things little by little. Each box felt like progress, not just physically leaving the apartment, but mentally closing that chapter of my life. I remember the last day pretty clearly. There was no goodbye, no final conversation, no attempt to clear the air or reflect on what had happened. I packed up the last of my stuff, looked around the room one final time, and walked out. And that was it. No drama, no closure in the traditional sense, just done. But honestly, I didn't need anything more, because by that point, I had already processed what I needed to. I had already learned the lesson. Living with her taught me something important, something I probably wouldn't have fully understood otherwise. Boundaries matter. Not just setting them, but actually sticking to them. For a long time, I ignored the signs. I told myself she was just stressed or anxious or going through something. I kept adjusting my behavior to keep the peace, thinking that if I just tried a little harder, things would get better. But they didn't, because the issue wasn't something I could fix. It wasn't about me being more understanding or more flexible. It was about control, and the more I gave in, the worse it got. It took hitting that breaking point, when she tried to control something deeply personal, to finally snap me out of it. And once I stopped playing along, everything changed. Not because she changed, but because I did. That experience also made me more aware of what I want in my living situations and relationships: mutual respect, personal space, and the freedom to live your own life without feeling monitored or judged. It sounds basic, but when you've experienced the opposite, you realize how important it is. And yeah, I won't lie, the way things ended had a bit of a petty edge to it. Choosing to go ahead with my relationship, knowing how she'd react, and not holding back that final night, it wasn't exactly subtle. But at the same time, it wasn't just about being petty. It was about taking back control. It was about saying, without words, you don't get to decide this for me. And the result? Silence. Peace. Freedom. Funny enough, the best the apartment ever felt was when we stopped speaking completely.